Hello, I'm Nelson Liu and you're watching Western Perspective. This week, Perth's homeless people have been faced with the struggle of surviving on the streets. But new measures are being brought in to help people living at rough, including a new supported housing facility set to be located in East Perth, announced this week. Does it go far enough to help those without a home though? I talked to National Suicide Prevention and Trauma Recovery Project. Okay, so when we look at homelessness in Perth and WA in general, how bad is it?
Homelessness is not just more visible. In terms of crew total, it's much increased. So homelessness throughout the state is on the increase. The Kimberley has one of the highest homelessness rates in the world outside civil strife and natural disasters. 8% of its population is in some form of homelessness. That's dramatic, and the fact it doesn't get a mention is an indictment on us as a state and as a media too, which has a responsibility to actually bring to the fore. But in Perth, we have 1,000 street present homeless, 300 in the Perth CBD and surrounding areas, and 600 to 700 in the suburbs throughout Perth, including the Peel region.
The government instituted a 10-year plan on homelessness in December. How effective do you think it's going to be, and given the state that WA is in right now?
It can't come fast enough. It's a step in the right direction. It's a little bit of bricks and mortar, a promise of that. I've heard this all before. We've had promises of accommodation. They haven't transpired. We're waiting 10 years for a dwelling in Dora Street, Broome, for the homeless. Still hasn't happened. We're waiting for Kalgoorlie. Still hasn't happened. Hopefully, and I believe it will be so, that it will happen for WA in Perth. And it's long overdue, but it's only a step in the right direction. It's a small footprint, but it means a roof over the heads of some families and some individuals. As I understand, one of the common ground towers has been announced, and that's in Hill Street in Perth, and that will accommodate about 70, of whose 35 will be of street present homelessness. So that's a small reduction, but it's 35 souls that will have a roof over their head. How they will triage that, how they will support them, we'll wait and see. But that's a step in the right direction. That's a small footprint, a couple of steps. We need many more steps, and what I would have preferred to have seen was the whole 1,000 actually accommodated, 1,000 more dwellings.
You mentioned the common ground housing. Are these the answer, and how are they going to help?
They're only an answer. They're only an answer for the amount of people that they're going to support. So they're an answer for 70 individuals. They're an answer for what's promised as 35 street present homeless in that one tower that will be built in Hill Street, but it's not going to bring down the 300 homeless in the Perth CBD and surrounding areas. So if we go from 300 to 270, that's a step in the right direction, but we've still got then 270 souls who still do the streets, whose pillow is the pavement. When
we look at homelessness, is the McGowan government succeeding in any way given the measures that they've instituted?
No West Australian government in the last quarter century, in fact in the last half century, has gone forward in actually reducing unmet needs, in addressing homelessness, in eradicating homelessness. Housing first approach for the homeless is the best and surest way to go forward. No government has even approached that. This is a first step in the right direction. So what we've got is a couple of towers which are now half a century old, and their interim accommodation. They come with actually an escalation of complex issues, because you can't actually support people in the ways that you can in standalone dwellings, in independent living circumstance where you're outreaching to them. What we've got to give people is a quality of life akin to other Perth residents who majorly live in the suburbs, who majorly live in standalone dwellings, or in 3 or 4 level unit buildings, not in 10, 12, 15 level towers, and in the smallest of accommodation.
Is it frustrating that, particularly when it comes to homelessness, this is just another small step?
This is a positive small step, and this is the type of small step that we want to see more of. It's actually about a roof over people's heads. All the other small steps have been about supporting people on the streets. What we're seeing now is bricks and mortar. What we need to see is more bricks and mortar. And the bricks and mortar is the most vital missing link. It's the actual house. We need a roof over their heads. So I commend the government on this approach. What we need to see this is actually upscaled, extended, and right throughout all of Perth, and all 1,000 street present homeless people accommodated. We can end homelessness in terms of the street present. and we can actually do that with building 1,000 units of social housing stock for the street present. And what they've promised now is at least 70 with the first dwelling, which is a tower, will be accommodated. I'd rather see 1,000 standalone homes built with the street present accommodated.
That was Gerry Georgatos. And now we bring you this week's COVID-19 update with AMA WA President Dr Andrew Miller.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to say a few words about the current COVID situation in Western Australia, which is that we're waiting to see what's going to happen in Victoria and New South Wales with their attempts to control community spread. The piecemeal and relatively slow approach to lockdown in Victoria has meant that still 2 weeks after some suburbs were severely affected, the 7-day average rolling of cases is increasing. That means the virus is still spreading despite the measures they've taken. So we know how difficult it is to keep this thing under control once it's spreading in the community. This is a completely different game to where we were with return travellers being infected in hotel quarantine. And we now need to be humble and to accept that phase 4 is hanging by a thread in Western Australia. All it takes is one infected worker or other person returning for compassionate reasons from interstate to spread this in an asymptomatic manner in our community, and we'll be in exactly the same position as they are. Phase 4 will be long gone, and all of those people who have had terrific relief from fear and terrific relief economically, being able to get back to work, will be back to where we were a few months ago if this starts to spread around. The healthcare workers over there are being infected at a higher rate than the general community, meaning that it's spreading within facilities, and so we need to understand how we're going to prevent that from happening in our own state, what measures are being put in place to test patients before they come in to hospitals here, how we're upgrading the PPE, how we're upgrading the way that people work in terms of rostering and workspace and so on. So there's a lot of work to be done to keep this out of our community, to prevent the death and the devastation and the fear that it's going to be happening in other places. And our hearts really go out to those who are trying to get the Victorian situation and the New South Wales situation under control. The best thing we can do in Western Australia is stay healthy. The idea of having really big crowds gathering together sort of seemed exciting a couple of weeks ago. Now it does nothing but engender a great deal of anxiety for those of us who are trying our best to keep this disease away. So stay positive, stay healthy, and accept that we may need to see increased restrictions in order to keep this horrible disease under control, although there is good news coming out every day around the possibility of vaccination and treatment in the future. So it's really worth holding on to our great record and not becoming just another on the list of countries who are dealing with just the horrible outcome of this disease being widespread. Thanks for your time.
And that's all for this week. We'll be back with an all-new WP next week, but for now, it's back to you.
Thank you, Nelson. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website and social media pages.
No matter where you're watching, please take care and have a pleasant evening.
Good night.